hopefully somebody will see this that might be struggling a little bit and give them that inspiration to take that next step.
Extreme success is the result of working hard, dreaming big, learning from failure, loyalty, persistence, and resilience.
Welcome to this episode of Xtreme One to Watch podcast. We have an incredibly inspirational and great guest with us today in Patty Ott. So your host today will be myself, Destiny Crane, and my mother, Dana Burns-Shaw.
And we are very excited to have you here, Patty. One of our dear, dear friends from Xtreme. We met you several years back. I think it was at Reno, right? One of our first races that was in Reno, and met you and your daughter. And what a fun run we've had together. Patty just put down an amazing run today. So she's all smiles. She was in our 15 club, and just a fabulous day and a great run for you and your daughter. Unfortunately, Casey barely tipped a barrel to do really well as well, but that's barrel racing, right?
It is, and she's been working really hard at trying to nail that first because he tends to overrun it just a little bit. Got a little bit too close coming out. He hipped it coming out, but it's okay because I beat her today.
And that, I'll tell you, it's a fun competitive spirit. You two have hauled a lot of miles together and have really created such a bond that's not only in the arena but outside of the arena. And as Destiny mentioned, you have such an inspirational story, and we learned more, and it has unfolded. And we were so grateful that I think we had you as our cover person on our Barrel Pen magazine, one of our first magazines that ever came out, and we have your full story in there. But we want to share that with our listeners today because we feel like it's definitely one to watch and listen to because it's so inspiring. I don't know of anyone that has overcome more tragic heartache than you, and to see you back in this saddle and competing at a top level as you did today, it's very heartwarming, and I smile at this wonderful opportunity that we have here today.
Thank you. First of all, it takes a really good horse to get me where I need to be because I have to trust him, and he takes really good care of me. Yes. Thanks to Destiny.
Yes, Pyro, he's a great boy,
special.
and you have taken such good care of him and overcome some trials there too to get him back to be running to where he wasn't supposed to be here either.
Right. So, cripples have to stay together. So that's what makes us bond, I think, because I can understand his pain and his suffering a little bit. So it helps me make him better, and he makes me stronger.
How did barrel racing come into your life?
So I was about 5 when I got my first horse. And it was a black mare, nothing special, just something to play around with on the ranch, so to speak. And one thing led to another, and I didn't like the cutting and the reining because it's all scorecarded, and if they don't know who you are, you don't never score high enough to win, and you can't cheat the clock, so to speak. So I got interested in doing that and started with the little play days, and it just kind of went on from there.
That's great. So where were you born and raised? What's your background?
I was born actually in California, raised there for the most part, moved around a lot due to my dad's line of work, and then settled here in Nevada when we lost my first son at the age of 14 in Urrington during an event. He was pole bending, and he always wanted to go first, so they let him go first that particular day, and he went around, made a really good rundown, turned the pole, weaved back, did his in pole, weaved back, and as he was weaving back, everything just kind of shut down, and he started going into slow motion, hit that in pole, threw his hands in the air, said he was number 1, and died in the saddle.
Oh, how tragic. And what was he diagnosed with after you didn't, he had some sort of illness that he was battling at that time? He
had ARVD, which is atrial right ventricular dysplasia, and it goes very unnoticed, especially in athletes. Mm-hmm. And so he had a pacemaker installed, which was supposed to keep his heart at a normal rhythm because he had several episodes in the past. And we were told that they would never die. That would always keep his heart beating, but it didn't work. And he died in the saddle, so to speak. And when the mare finished that run and ran to the gate, she just kind of stopped. And of course, he fell off, his foot hung in the stirrup, and she literally just rocked back and forth until his foot came out. And she turned around, looked at him, and walked off.
Wow. What a tragedy at 14. And as we've mentioned before, I seriously don't know how you've overcome so much. And you and your family, so what year was that, Patty?
I was in '02, August of '02. If there's somebody out there that's suffering and thinks they're all alone, they're not, because there's a lot of us that went through a lot more than others and can help them walk through that. And if they can read the story and see that they're not alone, it might help them be able to power through it.
Yeah. Because that's what it's all about, is just trying to find that strength back when you don't think you'll ever find it again. And with each other, we get stronger. And boy, I know this is hard for you, and we thank you from the bottom of our heart to, if we can help anyone else that has these tragedies, and where they can carry on and see that there still is life after all of those.
And there's always hope. You just have to be strong enough to get through it. But if people don't know that other people are suffering and have the same amount of heartaches or worse, they have no idea they can do it. So sometimes they just give up hope. And hopefully somebody will see this that might be struggling a little bit and give them that inspiration to take that next step.
We had the magazine article. We had so many people comment to say, boy, I thought I had it rough. I thought that I'd went through so much. And this really made me realize that not that I'm not alone, but I didn't have it as bad as some do. So, and family's everything. And it's so hard when we lose one of those main key units of our family, and to be able to pick up and carry on. So when it was around November, right? It was a Thanksgiving time when you and your family were headed to one of your other family members' homes. Yep. If you could walk us through that a little bit and tell us.
Okay, we were headed to Craigmont, Idaho to go spend time with my husband's side of the family, with Buck and Molly Ott. And it was in Jordan Valley. It was on 11/26/15, Thanksgiving morning. And there was a car coming the opposite direction, and somehow or another I was sleeping because I had worked that night, so my husband was driving, and I woke up to him saying, "Oh shoot." Sorry. But it was the way he said it, and all I could see is the headlights coming at us, so he went off to the right to try to avoid a head-on collision, and we hit ice, and it sped us down an embankment where we rolled 4 to 5 times. Everybody was ejected from the vehicle. I was thrown into a fence. He had his seatbelt on, but when you go nose over tail and rollovers, they tend to pop you out of those seatbelts. He was thrown out. Casey was sleeping in the back seat, and she was also thrown out of a side window, I believe. And I woke up to her screaming at me to wake up, and I was stuck in a barbed wire fence. So my leg on the left was in the second strand of the wire of the fence, and my other leg, I believe, was on the ground from what I was told.
Oh,
I was in and out of consciousness for quite some time because we laid there for a while before anybody noticed, because it was a cold, chilly morning and there was not much traffic on that highway. And Casey just kept coming back to me screaming to wake up, wake up. And I remember waking up at one point, and I just kept sending her back to her dad to make sure he was okay. And she couldn't find the phones in the car because everything was like in, disarray in the car. There was no way she would be able to find it. The car was still running, so the doors didn't unlock because they had those safety features where they lock when you go in to drive. And it wouldn't unlock. She couldn't get the doors open because the car was still running. And she was in shock as well, so she didn't know what to do. She was 14 at the time and wandered around out in the snow trying to find us help, and ended up going the wrong direction into a cow pasture until she seen lights, and then she tried to run back to the highway to stop them, but it was too late. They'd already went by. But she was able to flag down the second vehicle that came by to get them to stop, but there was no cell reception anyway. So they had to drive on to be able to call somebody, and then they came back.
Wow. This is something that you couldn't even script out of a movie. It's so tragic in so many different aspects, because being that, to see that happening at 14, and then your injuries were very horrific at that time too. And unfortunately, your husband didn't survive that accident.
He did not. He was thrown, and somehow or another the car landed on top of him, not on top of him, but he was under the car, under the back axle. And Casey had been seeing some tragic accidents in our travels and where people actually caught on fire because the car was still running. So she grabbed him and pulled him out from underneath the car because she thought it was going to catch on fire, and she had to try to help him, and she couldn't where he was, and she couldn't get him to wake up. So I think he was already passed at that point. So with my injuries, when they finally got there, they called 2 helicopters. And I kept asking them about my husband. They wouldn't tell me. They just kept saying they were working on him, but I knew they weren't because I already knew he was gone because of what Casey had said. She was smart enough to know how to check pulses and to do all that good stuff, in case of an emergency. And she kept saying he wouldn't wake up. So at that point, I knew he was not coming back.
Oh, it's unimaginable in so many levels, and for a 14-year-old young person to experience as much as Casey has had to experience. And then they airlifted you off of the site. What happened with Casey?
They airlifted her as well. She had severe frostbite on her feet. And at the time, she was a really good gymnast. So it ended her gymnastics career because she couldn't feel her feet on the beam because she lost sensation in parts of her feet. So she wasn't able to finish competing. But it taught her a lot of balance. It helped her with her horses for the most part. Of course, her dad didn't make it. He was DOA at the scene. So they airlifted her, and I kept asking where she was. And eventually they brought her in at one point because I was in and out of consciousness because I had a major brain injury also. And then I had over 38 fractures, broke my hip, my pelvis, all of my ribs, fractured my skull around my eye socket on the right side was all broke. Massive cuts all over my face. I lacerated my liver, but because I laid in the snow so long and had hypothermia, I didn't bleed completely out.
Wow.
So that was a blessing,
in disguise.
Yes.
Yeah, it was the snow kind of packed me, and because of the hypothermia, I didn't bleed out because it slows your heart rate and all that good stuff down. So that's the only thing that kept me alive was the snow.
Well, you've had a lot of things that not only did you overcome, but had a lot to live for at that point. I don't know how Casey could have lost both of you.
Yeah, and I have another son too. He's home now taking care of the ranch and all the critters. Casey's 20 now, so she's moved out on her own, and so my son moved home to help take care of everything and has stepped up quite a bit and become the kind of father figure for his kids that he should be, and takes care of the ranch when we're not there and helps us with the horses when we are there and takes care of everything, fixes everything that breaks and keeps us going for the most part.
Yes.
But I had a hard time in the hospital. I just wanted to hurry up and get home because the horses were all there. Yeah. And I didn't know how much longer he could keep it together because he had lost his daughter, my granddaughter, when she was 2 to complications of open heart surgery. And I was afraid that he was going to lose it, and I needed to get home. So the whole time
you had lost your granddaughter too before your husband.
Yeah. So
you'd lost both your son, a granddaughter, then your husband.
Yep.
In that order then.
Yep.
My
My granddaughter passed in 2012 here in Vegas due to the complications from open heart surgery. And then my husband died in 2015.
How old was your granddaughter?
2.
Wow. It just makes my heart hurt just thinking about the pain and suffering you've had to endure, let alone all of those injuries. I mean, that had to be unbelievably painful. I mean, one of those, let alone those scores of fractures that you had. And then if that wasn't all bad enough, then you were headed to a doctor's appointment.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, I'm telling you, no one could believe this if it were a movie. I mean, there's no way they could even believe it's for real. So talk to us about the second accident. That was, how long ago was that after your major accident?
It was about 2 months after. So it was in December, so it was about 6 weeks. And we were flown from Boise to Reno, and I had to go to my first ortho appointment here to establish that connection, to make sure I was on the right meds and get all my therapy and stuff lined out. And we were coming back from that appointment, and some nice gentleman thought that he could make it and ran the stop sign and hit the back of the vehicle we were driving and fractured my back because I was already broken. Like I'd already broke my neck and had many other fractures, and he broke the thoracic part of my back in 3 spots.
Wow, just unbelievably difficult. So then you were forced back into the hospital?
No, because I had already had severe injuries anyway, so they couldn't do a whole lot for it. They weren't like major fractures, and none of my spinal cord was ever, compromised. So that's the only reason why I got to walk. But the part of my hip that was broke was my hip was broke. It didn't only break my hip, but it shattered my femur. And then it broke my hip in several spots. So they had to pin everything together, and they didn't think that I would be able to walk. And because I had no pulse in my right leg for quite some time, they didn't know for sure if it would even accept being put back together, so to speak. So they weren't sure if putting it back together and getting blood flow was going to take, or if they'd have to amputate.
So
Go ahead.
probably didn't expect to be able to get back in the saddle again with
They
all
told
of
me I
those
would never ride,
extensive injuries. And so what was the timeline on from being able to get back in the saddle, and how was that to get back on a horse?
So I was never supposed to be able to ride. I wasn't even cleared to go back to work because I had to go back to work because I needed the health insurance. And so the first horse I got back on was Casey's little horse that she runs, actually, because he's small. And of course, I had to get on with a ladder because I have no range of motion. Still don't have any range of motion to get on, but would get on him and just walk around because I always heard it was good therapeutic exercise for your hips, for that rotation of your hips to help gather and build muscle. And so I would just get on him and just walk him around a little bit, but it was about 6 months.
Wow, that's incredible with that extensive of injuries to be able to get back on in 6 months.
And I remember there were many times, because Casey was still in school, my son wasn't living at home, he had his own place at the time, and she would go off to school and I'd have to go out and feed in the mornings, and it was a wheelchair in a quad. So I'd take the wheelchair to the quad, get on the quad and take the feed and go around and feed all the horses in the morning.
How do you think, when you look back, where was a changing point, or did you always know you just had to survive it? I'm sure there were so many hard days.
I had to survive it for my children and the grandchildren because they needed strength and they needed help. And I think if I would have died, I don't think neither one of them would be where they're at today. I think my son would have totally lost it and ended up on the side of a mountain somewhere just doing stupid stuff. And so he's a strong individual, yes, but when it comes to stuff like that, it's with so much in such a short period of time. I don't think he could have held it together.
Yeah, so just knowing that you've been given a second chance to help them, and that motherly instinct that kicks in that says, I have to do this for my children's sake and my grandchildren. Well, those grandchildren, how old are they now, and let's talk about better fun things now.
So Brianne is 11, and she rides the yellow horse that Casey got started and patterned for her. And Izzy is going to be 10 in July, and she rides a little pony.
Yes, they are cute.
And we have one more little one that lives in California, and she's 6.
Well, that keeps you busy, and I watch and see your little posts and see them out doing their fun little gymkhanas and all of that, and the future is bright for them as well. It's just great to be able to see the next generations as they come up. And so what would you say to others that are going through great loss? Is there something that you could help them with to understand that there is hope at the end of this?
Well, there's always hope. You have to have a lot of faith and believe in yourself, because you can push yourself to do things that are unimaginable. And you just have to have the want to do it. You have to have something to look forward to and something to push toward. Because if you don't have something to look forward to, the pushing forward gets you nowhere. So you have to think of something that like me, I loved a barrel race. And I knew I'd be back in the saddle. It took me about 1.5 years, maybe 2 years to actually start competing again, but here I am.
You did it.
Laid down a beautiful
15
run today.
club.
Yes.
I know.
Well, and you don't have do you have after, I know you said you had a bad brain injury that went with that. Do you still have things you struggle with?
I do. When I get really tired, my speech goes kind of wonky sometimes. Your brain does amazing things and processes its path, its nerve paths and stuff, so you can actually find different ways to go. So when in my accident, I had a hard time talking because everything come out slurred a lot, or my words would come out backwards. So it's just a process of trying to get to where I could actually function and talk. I still have lots of injections that I go through. Like I have to constantly go in and get ablations in my neck, or I can't ride because it hurts. The pain is so intense. Eventually, I have to go back in and have another surgery on my femur because they never were able to put it together. So there was a gap in my femur about like this, and the bone will bridge. Your bone will bridge. And it did, but my bone is about this wide now. And it pushes on everything in there that it's not supposed to. So it causes a lot of pain. Wow. And I'll never walk normal. I'll always have a hitch in my get along, so to speak. But yes. It's all right. I get to where I need to go.
Yes. Yeah. Well, if Hollywood's out there watching, really, this story is beyond remarkable, and it's just beginning as far as I think you've shifted past all of that and only good things are ahead. What's some of your best wins for you and Casey? What's been the highlights since the accident? What are some of your highlights of your life?
Casey has stepped up a lot because she had to take care of me a lot. I had to have a lot of injections, and she was made and forced to have to come in and give me those injections all the time because I couldn't get out of bed. And I made they give you these little cotton web belt things in there, to pull yourself up and around. I made a little loop out of it and would rope my foot so I could pick it up and move where my leg where I wanted to go because I had no feeling in it and couldn't move it. So would help myself. But I think it made her stronger. I think it's made her appreciate life a little bit more.
Nothing like having it taken away to make you appreciate it.
Right, because she could have just as easily lost both of us. Because it was touch and go for a while. When my mom first got the call, because when I was in the emergency room before they wheeled me to surgery, they had to stabilize my temperature before I could have surgery. And I remember them suturing up my eye, and they didn't give me anything to numb it because they thought I was out, and I could feel every suture, but I couldn't respond. Like, I was awake, but I couldn't respond. So because of the blood flow in my brain was doing some wonky stuff at the time. But I heard them say that they were going to cut my wedding band off once they got me into surgery. And so I reached over with my hand and took it off and held it up for them. And they had no idea it was even conscious.
Oh, wow. Oh.
So they were working on me that whole time. And it was just pain. Pain's a sign of weakness as far as I'm concerned because I live it every day, and it's weakness leaving the body. And once you get to a certain amount of pain, you just don't feel it anymore.
I can't even imagine any amount of pain that you could, at some point, that you couldn't feel it. It was that bad.
Yeah, it was that bad.
So your brain shuts it off or something just for survival?
So you can survive.
I think
just to survive.
Because when they rolled me onto the backboard, they grabbed my right hip and femur because that's supposed to be the strongest part of your body. And that's the part that was shattered. And that was the most probably intense pain I've ever felt in my entire life. And I've cut fingers off and had them sewed back on and lots of things in the past, but that was pretty intense. Wow. So if I never have to go through that again and have to go through what I go through, I'd be okay with that.
Right. I think you've checked all the boxes that you need to as far as learning about pain and suffering. Now we hope that it's only good things that you get to check off in your future with you and your daughter and your son and your granddaughters, and you deserve nothing but the best life has to offer you, Patty. You do deserve it. You've went through so much. And it's so inspiring. Every time when I watch you come into the arena, there's just something about it. Your light is so bright, and it just uplifts everyone around you, because those that know you and know your story are so impressed by your tenacity and your grit and your ability to overcome and get on. And now running in the top 10% of the runners, it's just, what a wonderful story. Like I said, it's made for Hollywood. It's definitely, do you have a book? Can you write a book? Do you have a book in you? I know you have lots of books in you. We need to at least get someone to write it all down, because it's just unbelievable, all of the different things.
And I appreciate the fact that you let me get my story out there, and you guys always take really good care of me at the races. always make sure my horses and the trailer is fairly close together so I don't have to walk quite so much, because it does kind of get tiresome by the end of the weekend. And so you guys are amazing as well.
You're our extreme sister. You're our sister. We really do think of you as family and Casey, and that's what we love about what we do is we do become a big extended family, and we are there for each other, and you have been there for us as well. You've helped out when you've always offered, and you and Casey, there's many times that you've helped us when we needed things loaded in, loaded out, this or that, and tell me too, I think you have a therapeutic business. Casey works on horses and things as well?
She does. She is a licensed massage therapist, and we have a Beamer blanket and an Acuscope, and she does amazing things with the horses. In fact, I don't think Pyro would be where he's at today if it wasn't for her keeping him going, and Destiny's training and help along the way of pointing us in the right direction to get him where he needs to be. And he gets Acuscoped a lot. He gets massaged a lot. His TMJ tends to give him a little problem, and we just got some valuable information on that this weekend that we're looking forward to moving forward with. And it's made a huge difference on his performance. As you can see, he didn't hesitate at the gate.
No, he didn't
kind of
run up the
balked
fence.
that one time, which is amazing. And then once he got in there and I just kissed to him a little bit, he just took off. Like, it
And
was
wrapped
amazing.
that first barrel.
Oh my gosh, that
it
first
was
barrel.
one of the most beautiful first barrels I've seen Pyro and you make. And
It was beautiful. It was a nice barrel. And then I get lost because I'm like, wow, that was a good turn, and I'm already at the second.
now it's time for another one, right? Yes.
Right?
Yes, and wrapped and rocked that third.
Oh man,
too,
they were all
stayed
really
up
nice,
and
yeah.
they were perfect. So
And tomorrow will be faster and better.
yes,
Always a better run of weights. Always another one coming. And again, we wish you nothing but the best. We can't wait to see the progress on not only Pyro, but what's coming down the pipe. And both you and Casey, you're such a dynamic duo. You're such a great mother-daughter team. And we understand mother-daughter teams, and there's nothing like it. It's a great love and bond that goes on. And again, thank you so much for sharing your story. You're definitely always one to watch. This is Patty Ott, and make sure you catch all of our episodes every other Thursday on any podcast and also our YouTube channel.